Everybody, it's Marty the JavaScript party. I left Red out in the living room today. I don't know if you could hear her there. She's making some noises out there. She's not happy that she didn't get to come in here today. The main reason was because my daughter-in-law is going to be bringing her dogs. I'm running a little later. It's 9:42 a.m. It is beautiful outside. It's Friday, uh, April 18th. 13 days left. No, 12 days. This is a 30-day month. 12 days left in the month. And the so my daughter-in-law will be bringing her dogs over. And one of her dogs is a Staffordshire Terrier, which is sort of like a mini pit bull, but they're the sweetest dogs you'll ever meet. Like literally, absolutely, just the kindest creature. This creature is, anyways. It is just, of all the animals I've ever been around in my whole life, it is the kindest, but it is also one of the most powerful creatures I've ever seen. And carrying Rhett from here into back to her regular cage, while Pebbles is the dog's name, while Pebbles is out, is a very, very, very challenging effort, in which quite often I'll take a big hit to my knee. I have one of my knees isn't quite as good as the rest of my body, or she'll make a jump because she just wants to see Rhett so bad. So I couldn't bring her in today. But anyways, so yeah, I'm running late today, and the reason I'm running late is, like, normally I would have started working 45 minutes ago, and I would have 15 minutes before my stand up, but we have today off, and it's quite controversial, why we have today off. It's kind of funny, but I guess it would be it's just very specific to Georgia, and really very more specific to the Southeast. And it has a lot to do with, like, the Confederate War and flags and things like that. And it's kind of like weirdly controversial. But so we're off today, and we are enjoying being off today. And it is called State Holiday. And some places are off because of Good Friday. Some places will call the date that we're off right now Flag Day. So it used to be, up until about 20 years ago, it was called Confederate Day here in Georgia. But anyways, and that brings in a lot of problems. Now, I'm from New Mexico originally, and then Florida, and we weren't really involved in the Civil War, so I don't really have, like, a lot of like, I don't have a lot of emotional baggage attached to any of this stuff, so it's hard for me to sort of empathize with what's happening, because I just don't really get it. But I do acknowledge I don't get it, so I'm not going to say much about it other than the fact that it exists. So we are in a funny place, because what happens is we have 338 lines of code that have been written, and 337 of them have been tested. We have 35 branches, and 34 of them have been tested. We have 100 functions, and 87 of 87. Well, no, we have 87 functions, and all 87 functions have been tested. And I've never really understood what the difference between lines and statements is. Every once in a while, I'll see there'll be a gap, and I'll sort of stop everything so I can see, like, oh, okay, we have 339. And you typically, I think if you're going to have a different, you'll have more lines than statements. So there's some slight difference between a statement and a line. And every time I get it, it's so uninspiring, it's so uninteresting that I immediately forget it. But then, like, the fact that there's a difference just always catches my attention. So normally there's a thing called diminishing returns, where it would be like, oh, you get the most benefit from, like, the first 10%, and then the next 10% you get a little less benefit, and then by the time you get to the end. But I've found with unit tests, in my personal experience over the last couple of weeks, just from like, if your benefit is personal growth, you probably get the last piece is where you get the most benefit. So it's sort of the inverse of the diminishing returns. I would imagine for the project itself, like to keep the project moving, but also have the benefits of unit tests, which I don't really know what those are. Then it is a true diminishing returns. So early this week on unit tests, I had come to the conclusion that you should never, ever, 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 ever in a million years have a for loop that then has lines of code within it, so that that you should always have a function that you call instead. The problem with that is, and that was my new rule. I come with that new rule, and then the very next test kind of broke that rule, because I don't know how. I want this set calculate position to not have any dependency on the context. So I don't want to see the word this in this function over here ever, or any in this whole set calculate position. I want set calculation to be what is considered to be a pure function. And so in order to accomplish that, I pass in this is2wide function, right? So is2wide is a function that lives on in here, but I pass it in so that it gets executed within here. And the benefit to that is A, I can unit test is2wide on its own, and B, I can keep this pure. I don't have to and all that. I don't have to have access to the context in order, because I'm passing it in. And that's really good, I think. I think that's a win. But on the downside, I don't want to end up having 20 functions that I pass in. I think we're already at 3 arguments, and it's probably a bit abstract already. We're passing in a function, we're passing in a list of visualizations. Like those two things are sort of abstractions onto their own, and I don't really want to have like another function. I think it would be really, really difficult to sort of make sense of. And that's the whole point of all this stuff. Like, we come up with these kind of concepts that we want to achieve and ideas that we want to achieve, but then we become more fixated on the ideas and the concepts than we do on the purpose of the ideas and the concepts. And the purpose of the idea and these concepts is to make these codes easier to reason about. And the reason we want them to be easier to reason about is because it makes it more maintainable. And so you'll see developers sort of get sucked into, oh no, anytime you have this, it's less maintainable. And anytime you hear that sort of reasoning where it's like, oh, it doesn't make sense, but it's more maintainable, that's when you got problems. Like, to get like there's this. So my daughter married into a family, and they're a very, very important family in Georgia, and they had a relative die. He stepped into a road, he got hit by a car, and he died. And the thing is that road they had put cameras in, speed control cameras. So what would it do is, as you went through, if you went through on a red light, it would take a picture of you. And for some reason, drivers started acting differently when that speed control, like they would see that it was coming, they didn't want to get a ticket, they felt like they could make it through, so then they would speed up and try to beat the camera, because they knew there was going to be a camera when that picture was taken, if they entered the intersection while the light was red, they would get a picture. But if they could get in there while it was still yellow, they wouldn't get a picture, they wouldn't get a ticket. So people became fixated on the lights instead of the pedestrians. So somebody sped up and killed this famous person, right? Not this person from an important family. And my daughter, I don't think she was married into the family yet. I think she was engaged, and so she wasn't like. So we didn't we weren't really deeply like vested in any of this. We'd never met the person or anything like that. But then there was an analysis done, and they saw that the number of pedestrians killed at that during that crosswalk on that crosswalk was had spiked since they put the cameras up. Like the month after they put the cameras up, the number of pedestrians hit went down, and then afterwards they went up. And there was sort of this weird argument that kept debate that kept going, because there was some people who wanted to take that camera down because an important person had been killed, and then or a person from an important family had been killed. I believe this person was a judge, though, so I think on their own they were also considered important. But then there were people that said no, cameras make it safer. It was just like kind of like in the movie Idiocracy, Gatorade electrolytes make you stronger. Like this stable rule, dogmatic rule that says cameras make intersections safer, and it didn't matter that the death rate at that and the number of people hit had gone up, because there was a foundational rule that says cameras make it. I feel like that's exactly what you run into a lot of times when you're debating developers. They're like, this makes it more maintainable. This abstraction makes it more maintainable, and it's just like, yeah, but it's really confusing, which makes it harder to reason about, which makes it less maintainable. It's like, I'm not going to listen to the 4 steps that you just said. I'm going to listen to the abstractions make it more maintainable. So it's like one of those things where like we have the only reason any of those concepts exist is to make the code more easy to reason about. So set calculate positions is actually, I think, more easy to reason about, because we have a function called is too wide. So it's very clear that if it's too wide, that's part of calculating the position, is how wide things are. And then we see that we have a left, we have a width, and we have a viewport width. So, it's like gives you some hints on what to think about, right? It helps because it's a very complex constant. So basically, when we get to this 5th one and it tries to figure out what to fit in there, it's like, oh, it's too wide because this one will bleed off the edge there, so it's calculating this, this, and this. So we look over here and it's like, okay, left. Okay, so that's going to be this over here. Let's see. Width. Okay, so that's going to be how wide this is. Viewport width. So that's going to be this whole width, right? With those 4 things. And maybe it wouldn't be so obvious like if it's the first time you looked at that code, but it is very obvious to me since I've been through it a bunch of times. And that's sort of the argument for unit tests. Now, I'd say that's the biggest argument for unit tests. I think the biggest argument against unit tests is we are literally over halfway through April, and we haven't even really thought about the actual main mission. We have been completely distracted. Our eye is 100% off the ball. We are like a baseball player that's looking at the crowd to see how happy everybody is and the pitcher's throwing the ball. And we're just going to swing the bat whenever we can. Our eye is off the ball. We're not paying attention to what we're supposed to be paying attention to. And I don't know where, what to think. And so my main position at this point in time on unit tests is they are a fantastic thing to do on your personal account projects, or if, let's say, your organization has like a sort of a project that you're supposed to kind of work on whenever you're not, like engaged. Like a lot of times you'll have dead time because you're waiting for pull requests to go through or something like that, so you need to stay fully mentally engaged in your main arc of work, but you're waiting on things. So they don't want to give you a new arc of work because, you have to get fully engaged in that. So there's like some fun or some utility or something that you guys work on that isn't so intense. Like that's probably a perfect thing to have unit tests for. So you guys could just debate for hours and hours and hours about these sorts of things on that, but it doesn't slow down, and you could benefit from sort of all getting on the same page from having those debates and all that. It doesn't really matter that much, but at the same time, your main sort of arc of work doesn't get thrown off. I think that that might be the thing. What was that? Memory usage. I've never noticed so this tab is using 35.6 megs of memory right now. Now I have multiple gigs of memory, I think. But let's look at this tab, which you would think would be using a lot more. 57.9 megs of memory. So that is so crazy. So we have all these things moving around and all that kind of stuff, and it's using less. Well, now it's 111. Let's see, what about this one? It's still 35.6 now. Does it go up? Okay, so that one, like we can move this around, it doesn't. But this one, if we mouse over, it's still 1111. I wonder what causes that to change. Now, if we're on it, it's still 111. Let's see. This would be actually a very good way to see if you have a memory leak. Like you could hit reload, mouse over. So 128 megabytes. So see, that's what I thought. It was weird to me that it was only like 56 because there's just a lot more going on this page. Oh, mouse. But now it's stabilized, so there's like no. What I would be interested, like, so I probably will experiment with this on like the enterprise application that I work on professionally. Like, kind of click around and then mouse over, and see what the usage is, and then go back to the original page and mouse over. And I think if you click in and you're moving all around, and then you go back to the original page and your memory doesn't drop, that may be a good indication that you have a memory leak, that you have things that are not getting removed when they should get removed. I don't know, but that is interesting. And to me, that is kind of the main reason. What you just saw me do is one of the main reasons to kind of work on stuff on your own time when you're just piddling around. Another thing I did want to mention was, so a friend of my wife has a show, and there's someone that she does a lot of business with, and they were like, oh, my nephew wants to learn how to code. Can you send me a link to your husband's YouTube channel? And I was just like, oh God, no, do not. This is super advanced stuff. Like, this is not, the reason I do this is so that people could see what being a real coder is like in real life. Do not try to start from scratch and learn from scratch by watching this, because that would. And so then I was kind of like, well, maybe I should start like a different channel, like not a channel, but a different playlist that is for learning how to code from scratch, and maybe because I don't know Python, so maybe I could learn Python from scratch and just sort of record my journey of learning Python. But I just don't have time. I really don't. You always think you have time, but like I started thinking about all the different things that I do, and then like certain things that I could kind of cut out of my life. But most of those things that I do that I could cut out are actually taking care of like 5 things at one time. And so it's kind of like I'd be cutting out a bunch of side effect benefits. And so, yeah, I just don't have time. But anyway, so let's try to figure this out. We are almost there. So we have an is too wide, but we do need to mock a visualization. Now, ChatGPT, I'm sure we could bumble through that. But man, ChatGPT made it so easy last time. But we are already mocking a visualization in a different thing. And let's see what specs. So if you click on this, it shows you everything that you've changed. What I'm interested in is I know that I made a mock with ChatGPT's help in one of the specs. And I remember it was like one of the very last ones. So let's just go through the process of trying to try and there we go. So this is our mock element. And so this is a pretty good argument for sort of centralizing this code. Like if the element changes, we don't have, and then we use this. If the element changes, and let's say some other important thing, we're gonna have to go through and fix it everywhere. But there's probably some sort of benefit to that too. You know, like the process of, oh crap, we just broke all the unit tests because we made this change. And then it forces us to sort of take a deeper dive into thinking about it. So I think I'm going to just copy this. And I think I'm going to go for being able to understand the spec that I'm working on over repeating myself. You know, like over not being dry. Like I think being dry is extraordinarily important. One of the most important things that exists for an actual application. I do not think that is probably true for unit tests. I think each unit test should kind of be its own thing. And if you see that you made some change somewhere and a bunch of unit tests that aren't even really related start breaking, then that in itself is useful information. So now we're back to where are we? We are still in animation service. So I want to go a little farther back into our visualization service. So we do have our is2wide function, and now we are going to mock our element, and see, we need to import this. So I don't know why we don't get the blue one. See, why is it yellow and that? It seems like it should be blue. So it's giving me a choice. I can import it directly from ST Visualization, or I can import it from, I believe it's called either a roll-up or barrel thing. And I think I'd rather take it from the barrel. So that's that. And then I want to Alt or Shift Tab that to get it to line up. And then I want to put, I believe I want to put that into an array, right? Like when we look over here, this visualizations, and we do take an array of ST visualizations. So, oh, I'm still not far enough back. One more. There you go. Okay. So we're going to say const visualizations. And those are ST visualizations. It's an array of them. And that is equal to an array. And I believe we can just, so 3 dots and mockviz. I don't know if it's supposed to, I think it might be have to be like that. No. Mockviz. I don't know what its problem is. Actually, I don't need to do that because it isn't an array. Oh, I wonder what the error is. Let's see what the error is. See, that's not a very useful error, I don't think. I think what that in English means is the array doesn't exist yet. So you can't just add it in. The array at that point, when I'm trying to add this to the array, is actually undefined. So I think now I can call st calculated, st calculate. Should we calculated or calculate? Again, there's another sort of win for, no, set calculated positions. Yeah, that makes sense. But that is sort of a win for unit tests, right? I made another, like, gave it some more energy into like going, is this naming appropriate? And I don't think there is anything. That may be one of the most important things in software development. Like, I think that's when you know you've left mid. So there's, sometimes some people divide developers into three categories. There's junior developers, middling developers, and senior developers. And there's just certain things that you will experience when you're a junior developer. And when you're a junior developer, you generally are like, I don't know what to name this thing. You'll spend a lot of time thinking about the name of things. And the reason you will is because you don't really understand what it's going to do. Like, you have no feeling. You have no concept of, you're writing code and you're sort of like a blind person just filling around, and you don't really know exactly where you're headed, and you're just trying to get there. And then you sort of hit the middling thing where you're like, okay, I've already done this 1,000 times. I know exactly what I want to do. And at that point, for some reason, you'll go, who cares? This is a list. And you'll start naming things list and object. And you'll just start giving very generic names to everything because, you already know what you're doing. You don't need to, you don't need to have these, put all this effort. That was stupid. You don't need to think about all that name. Even if you do name it now, it's probably going to be the wrong name. You're going to have to go back and fix it, and that's going to be a big pain in the butt. So just name everything just basic names. That is the absolute way. That is how middling developers are. And they're real pains in the asses because they are basically the teenagers they're like 13, 14-year-old in growing up, like they know everything. They have nothing to learn from anybody else and all that. And they're actually a lot of fun to be around if you take them, if you just take them for what they are, it's just a bunch of funny teenagers. But like, if you've only been a senior for a few years, they're annoying as hell. And it's just always funny because once they develop into, so you can watch them and they'll name everything with these generic names, and then when they go back to maintain their code, they're like, crap, I don't know what this does. I can't figure out what this does. And then I go look at this other person's code, and it's just clear as day because these are named visualizations, so I know they're visualizations instead of list. What the hell's list? I don't know. And then I named this other one list 2. What is list 2? And then I deleted list 2, but I had made another list 3, and now I don't have a list 2 anymore. And it goes straight from list to list 3, and inside of list, I go over list 4, and it's just so funny to watch them sort of go through the hell of those growing pains when they move out of realizing that they've completely screwed themselves up by not naming things very well. But anyways, now I have my visualizations, I have my is too wide, and I believe I can just set my viewport width to whatever, right? Const viewport width is equal to 100. So what, it doesn't matter, and this doesn't matter because is too wide always returns true. And that'll be very helpful to me in the future. So, so if I do have a problem in here, I'm not going to spend, at least at first, I won't spend any time on the viewport width, trying to figure out if something's up with that. So now I can say service dot, and I wonder if it makes a lot of sense to call it service. Does kind of make sense because, that whatever is named as service is the thing you care about. See, whatever's named, if I see visualization service, I know that's not what I'm testing. I know the thing I'm testing is called. I mean, if I had animation service, I would know that's just something I'm using to help with tests. So anyways, service dot positions. And the very first thing is too wide. And the the second thing is the width. What is width? The width is kind of confusing to me now. Do I use width? Where do I use width in this? Do I even use width? Bro, seems like I want viz width, but that's part of that. So let's go back to the visualization service. Oh wait. Oh, I'm looking at the wrong thing. Viewport width is the second thing, and then the list. I got confused here. Or somewhere. I don't know. I don't know. I was cray cray. So is too wide, and then viewport width is second, and then visualizations is third. All right, let's see what happens. Theoretically, so I'll still, okay, I do think this is so important, and I was working with a developer yesterday at my job. So at my job, I am most, in general, considered the most advanced Angular developer. I'm also considered the weakest. I wouldn't say weakest. Probably maybe. No, not weakest because there are some super junior people, but I'm considered pretty weak in the back end. So we do C# and we do SQL, and I'm extraordinarily like I can do tables, I can do selects, stuff like that. But anything beyond that, I don't really understand in relational databases. And then anything in C#, I can kind of take existing code and I can read through the logic and all that stuff. But I would never trust myself to build out like the architecture of, the business layer versus this layer and that layer, that kind of stuff. But like if you throw me in the business layer and there's some logic going on in there, I can definitely figure it out. But I'm expected to actually help anybody with any Angular issues, and I'm expected to always have the answer, right? So that's my job. My job is if there's an Angular issue, anybody's having an Angular issue, you go to me, and your problem will go away, and you will understand it better. I will teach you what you do. So there's this guy, and he's pretty good at all of them, but he's not. He hasn't really selected a single one to become an expert in. And so he came to me, and I was sort of saying, hey, I always go from what works. Like, I always try to start with something I actually understand that works the way I expect it to work. That is my process. And I believe that that is a very good front end process. I do not think it's feasible to have that process as like a C# developer or a SQL developer. But as a front end developer, that is my process. So I hit save on here. Now, when I go over here, I always like to think to myself, okay, what am I expecting? And what I'm expecting to see is all the unit tests to pass and one muted one. So, and I believe I'll have to hit reload to make that happen. And I have no idea what that's all about. So all the tests pass, and there's this one muted one. And layout service should change. ST-top for a new row is my muted one. Now, the other thing I'm expecting is to go over there and see 100% test coverage. So let's see. We want this red one to go away. Yep. So we are getting full test coverage. Now I expect to be able to hit back up here. Oh no, that's just telling me for this one. I'm expected to be able to hit this, see 100%. So mission accomplished. We have gotten to 100% test coverage. What's the next goal? Well, the next goal is to make this not muted anymore. And why is this one not muted? It's because I'm not actually doing any expectations, or any assertions. And so I need to do an assertion in order to get that to not be muted anymore. I thought I saw something. Is this the one? Spec has no expectations, because I don't want that, whatever that is. And this might be the point. Okay, so let's look for that. Spec has, well, that's mild. Why can't I find it? Did I do it? Spec has no expectation. So that I don't understand. I don't understand why spec has no expectation. Is not spec has is not showing up anywhere. Um, where are you? Okay, so this is the one I'm working on, but I don't understand why it doesn't. Why I'm not seeing this. Should change SC top for a new row. How about that? Oh, maybe that's something they throw in there. Interesting. Okay, so I did not know that they throw that at the beginning of anytime there's no expectation. So I guess that will go away. I thought that was a little note that I'd put myself. So over here, we want, I guess we want st top to be blank. It is interesting. So we're set it in. Oh, because it just calculates it based on whether it's true or false. So it doesn't matter. I feel like these should be numbers, though. Let's see if this breaks anything. Yeah, that didn't. And so now we expect the mock elements top to be 0 over here, right? This is what I think. Expect, and then mock element dot top. Oh, style to equal is 0. So I will say this is where I would. Oh, what? That's not a parameter of type. I am very confused by that. Okay, what does it change? Actually, now maybe I don't quite understand what's going on. It was this guy, right? Visualization. Here's the new hash, bro. Probably need to get rid of that. Hello world, hash start. Am I looking at the wrong thing? Visualization spec. Okay, so this is what I'm working on. Okay, so it actually changes the st top, not. Okay, not. It's the mock viz. To equal 200. And oh man, that kind of stinks. Okay, so we want to make this 0 actually. So, but let's just make sure everything passes first. We should have an expectation, which is doesn't actually test anything. So let's make this 0. So this is where I would get into it with a lot of architects, and now I kind of understand. But so like when you're a developer and there's a lot going on and you're on 2 week sprint and just you're going back and forth with QA and product managers and everybody else and your manager and all that stuff, you're sort of in a fog of war. And I would many times just sort of leave it like this. And then the architect would be like, what the heck, dude? Why don't you test the actual functionality? And I'd be like, I got 100%. 100%. I don't need to do anymore. And now I kind of understand because just was sort of in, just deep in battle. But yeah, at this point, I should do another test to see that it actually made. I'm expecting it to change it to 200, I think, because one times that. So reload. Now we should have all greens. I think I just skipped. Yeah, so we have all dark greens. I really wish, like one of my major gripes about this is its inconsistency in the order that it run things. I really wish it would be consistent and run things in the same order every time. The fact that it runs things in different orders is extraordinary. It can make things really difficult because, and the reason it can make things difficult is because sometimes the order matters. So you could get to a point where you end up with a unit test that passes sometimes for years, and then some sort of randomization, something happened, and then suddenly it's not what used to be order run first is now being run later, and like all the tests are broken and you can't figure out why because nothing changed, and you could just waste so much time. Now I don't know if they're purposely reordering things every single time now. Maybe something's changed on that, but I wish there was a way that you could just fix the ordering of this thing so that the order they're running isn't a moving part. The fewer moving parts, many times the better. Not always. Okay, so now I expect this to fail. So I want to have a failing test. And I'm hoping that it tells me 0 should have been 200. And if it doesn't fail, that's kind of a bummer. And I don't know if it just didn't run. Yeah. And expected 200 to equal 0. That's exactly what I was hoping to see. And now we'll make this 200. And we'll run this. And we officially have 100% test coverage. Now, are we done? I don't think so. I really don't. I think that, well, so obviously the very next thing is just go through and look for any console logs. And actually it's probably better just to do a search throughout the whole code for console. Okay, so we don't want any console logs. I don't think. And I don't, yeah. I have yet. I mean, sometimes you want a console log to console an actual error, like maybe this guy, say console log error. Like that console log is probably a good console log. For some reason, the whole thing didn't bootstrap. We have no idea why. I mean, what else are you going to do but console log an error? So we clearly don't want a hello world console log. And we don't want this console log. I wouldn't say clearly, but I don't think I want that. And we definitely don't want any console log that says bro in there. Every once in a while you go to a web page where they do really cool stuff in the console, like there'll be like drawings and art and stuff like that in there, and that's really neat. Like that's when I don't know what but something. So we don't have any more console logs. Just make sure that the application still works. And so this is a point where, like, back in the day, I would feel really, really good about things. But now I don't. And the reason I don't is because basically the reason, if we go to our app.js, or our app component, we do all this render, creating, and animating. So I think a lot of this 100% is a direct result of just like side effects of this stuff running. And we really, I guess, if we're gonna be like, oh, I want to, the problem is, and I've experienced this before in jobs, is that, like this, like if you're working in an agile environment, this may very well be what they wanted, what the sort of product managers and all that contrived. Like, hey, we just want to prove that we can show these things. Oh, we discovered that you can only have 16 of them. Okay, we need to change the way we write requirements and all that. So you might do that, but at some point we don't want it just to generate these things. We want the user to generate. We want the user to choose to generate things, not them just get generated. And when that happens, all this side effect coverage will just go away, and then that will leave us high and dry. Like, that could end up causing us to completely miss our goals, because suddenly our test coverage has plummeted because we don't have the default side effect unit tests happening anymore. So what I was doing before was I was coming in and I was just like commenting this out and seeing where we're at. The other thing I guess we could do, but I actually think this is probably still faster. Well, it still doesn't do it though, because there's still other things that will cause side effect. I think what we have to do is we have to actually go through our unit tests one by one and focus them, and then see if we still have 100%. So app is our first one, so we could go to app.spec and we can just put an F here. And I've never done this before. This is like kind of the first time I've ever sort of taken this approach before. So what I'm hoping to see is this still have 100% when I F describe it, which it should. I feel good about this one happening. So reload. And I really don't know what we're going to see up here. Yeah, so it ran 2 of 37 specs. And so we're still seeing 100% in app, which is what I was hoping for, right? I was hoping that this app would still have 100%. And so now let's go to app components viz. So we'll undo this one. Now, normally we probably wouldn't need to do this for all of them, like kind of iterate over all of them. Like I said, I've never really done this before, so I don't know. But I would think that if you only worked in one, and you did this ever to begin with, and you only worked in one area, you only had changes in, like if you look over here and you see only changes in one section of the code, that you would not need to go back and do those. So you would only need to do like, okay, we have changes in app component, we have changes, you'd only need to do the ones where you saw changes, but maybe not. I don't know. Like I said, I've never really been through this, but I'm going to close everything but this one. There's others, and then I'm going to come over here and I'm going to go to my viz component spec, and I'm going to F describe this one. And F stands for focus. I remember thinking it stood for something else before. And so what I want to see is for this one to still be 100%, even though it's no longer part of CA. It's 100% when it's app, but is it 100% on its own? Yes, it's still 100%. Even though the only one that ran was viz component should create viz component. And it looks like there's only one test in there. Um, so yeah, literally all it does, and then that just runs all the code. So that is interesting. So what's next? Animations. It's in services. Probably just just the act of doing this probably gives you, especially if you haven't written all the code yourself, gives you a better kind of take on everything. So this one we did make changes in, and it will be interesting to see if this one actually does run all of its own stuff, or if it's just happening because of. I'm pretty confident that we're going to have at least one issue. So it ran 7 tests. So animations did get 100% coverage. So I'm confident that something won't, and then that's probably where I'll end this video when I find the one that doesn't. So camera. So that's in services and camera. ST and camera. And then now the crazy thing about all of this to me is that like apparently this unit test scheme has been deprecated by Angular is my understanding. So this could be all for naught. Okay, so camera, if it doesn't get called, only has 26%. Oh, 4 out of 15 lines are covered. And let's see. Well, I guess it's easier if we click in. Click in here. It's only 26%. It only covers 26% of its own calls and 33% of the functions and 4 out of 15 lines, 4 out of 15 statements, 4 out of 15 lines, and doesn't have any branches. So, and it's nice that it gives us 100% when we don't have any branches. So now we click in here. So we don't have a unit test apparently that creates a base camera. So that should be interesting. So we'll have to bring in our sequence service to do that. Let's see what else. So this thing definitely uses heavy use of this. This camera service. So, okay. So it brings in its own ThreeJS recyclable service, its own ThreeJS camera service. So anyways, so that is the next mission, is to get this guy to 100% coverage on its own so that it doesn't depend on anything else to create it. And I don't know if that's a good idea. I really sincerely don't know if this is a useful path. It may be a brilliant path where, like, by the time we've worked through this, which could literally be at the end of May when we've gotten through everything and like literally we have 100% coverage with no side effect coverage, everything is 100%, legitimately 100% coverage, then if that ends up being just for naught, like that was just a huge waste of time, or I don't think it'll be a waste of time, because I think we'll definitely, even just knowing that that's a bad path would make it not a waste of time. But it could end up being like, oh my gosh, I've learned so many new and interesting things, and I have such a better understanding of this code because of it. I just don't know. I don't know how that's going to work out, but I do want to know, and I do want to document it. I do want to have these videos to go back and look at in the future if I'm trying to figure something out. That was sort of another thing, is when I used to work for the feds in a very highly sensitive project, like almost everything was blocked. I mean, just massive numbers of, like, probably literally 90% of the internet was blocked. I think they had more of a approved sites, not disapproved sites. So if it wasn't on one of the approved sites, and one of the sites that I've never seen blocked anywhere is YouTube. So I do, that was like sort of another motivating factor for putting all these videos on YouTube. Is I would know that I had worked on something before, and I was always like, man, I wish I had that on YouTube. And towards the end of it is when I did of that job, I did start putting videos on YouTube, and that was the main reason, was so that I could go look at that on YouTube, and not have to try to use multiple computers to see things and stuff like that. But anyways, that is that. Let's see, how long was this video? Almost an hour. But we are done with like at least getting 100% coverage. Um, let's see, what are we at? We made it all the way to camera service. So I imagine we'll have the same problems a long ways down here. It's kind of interesting that, oh, because all these are zeros, like that other things, but yeah, this thing hardly does anything on its own. Um, but that is that, everybody. I hope everyone has an amazing weekend. It is Friday, and TGIF. Happy coding, everyone. Bye.